I'm Randall Holcombe. We're talking about some ideas of public choice, and in this segment I want to talk about the ideology of progressivism. And this goes right along with the idea of what is the appropriate role of government. So to talk about progressivism and to introduce you to the idea, let me first think about the way that the progressive ideology has evolved in the United States. Although today, around the world, people are adopting this progressive ideology. In the United States, when the government was founded, the original idea was that the role of government was to protect the rights of individuals. Governments protect individual rights. And toward the end of the 1800s into the early 1900s, this progressive ideology developed where the progressives viewed an expanded role of government. Not only is the role of government to protect individual rights, but it's also to look out for their economic well-being. So that's the progressive ideology. Government not only protects the rights of people, it looks out for their economic well-being. And if you think about the way that progressivism started in the United States, it came along with industrialization, and we had all of a sudden some big concentrated economic powers. John D. Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie, these people in the United States were referred to as robber barons. They were so prosperous, and if you think about it in a market setting, why were they so prosperous? They were producing goods and services people wanted to consume. But nevertheless, they were doing so well relative to other people, and there was this idea that somehow they were using their economic power in order to exploit people who didn't have so much economic power. So this progressive ideology that says, in addition to protecting rights, the role of government is to look out for people's economic well-being. This progressive ideology led the government to pass a lot of regulations, antitrust laws. They regulated the railroads, regulated other businesses in order to limit the economic power of people who had a lot of economic power, nominally for the benefit of people who had less economic power. Now, I don't really want to get into a debate about whether the robber barons were doing good things or bad things. The key point in thinking about the progressive ideology is that moving away from protecting individual rights, this progressive ideology explicitly says that one role of government is to benefit some people at the expense of others. If we think about that progressive era and the robber barons in the United States, okay, the people that they were trying to limit the economic power of, the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, so forth. I mean, the idea was we're going to impose some costs on them for the benefit of other people. But the key element here is that progressivism enables the government to benefit some people at the expense of others. Now, if we move ahead in the 20th century, the progressive ideology has expanded quite a bit. Still, the idea is that the role of government is to look out for people's economic well-being. But as we move into the 20th century, the welfare states in Europe, in the United States, are another manifestation of this progressive ideology. The transfer payments, the support for low-income people, public education, health care. The purpose of all of this is to look out for the economic well-being of some, but at the expense of others. So we have a situation where if we're going to provide health care for some people, we're going to provide housing subsidies, food stamps, education. If some people have the right to get those things because of this progressive ideology, that means that some other people have to pay the cost. So we're not just protecting the rights of people, we're imposing costs on some for the benefit of others. That's the ideology of progressivism, and it's so widespread these days that we almost take it for granted that that's the role of government, imposes costs on some people for the benefit of others. So what the progressive ideology does is it enables government to provide benefits for some people at the expense of others. Now let's think about some of the earlier segments that we talked about. When government makes these public policies, who is it that makes the policies? It's not the masses. It's not the majority who's voting in elections. There are an elite few people in the legislature, lobbyists and so forth. Those are the people who are in a position to make public policy. So if we set up a system, nominally we're thinking we're doing this for the public interest. We set up a system where some people can benefit at the expense of others. Over time, who do you think is going to benefit from these policies? Is it going to be the masses who are rationally ignorant voters who don't participate in politics? Or is it going to be the elite, the people who are well connected, the people who are making public policy themselves? So what we see is that over time, this progressive ideology increasingly gives the government the power to benefit some people at the expense of others. And because it's the elite who control the public policy making, over time what we see is that increasingly the elite are able to use this progressive ideology to benefit themselves at the expense of others. So what we need to think about is, how do we protect our rights? How do we provide benefits for most people rather than having a government that provides benefits for the elite few? And here I think we need to back away from that progressive ideology. We need to back away from the idea that the role of government is to protect people's economic well-being, because the people who actually get protected are the people who make the policies. We need to go back to thinking about a democratic government not as carrying out the will of the majority, but a democratic government as a method for choosing who exercises the limited constitutional powers of government. So when we see the development of this progressive ideology over the 20th century and into the 21st, it's gone a long way toward compromising the very principles of government that have allowed the remarkable prosperity that we've seen over the last several hundred years.